Welcome to ANEC Sports coverage of the Girls Basketball 2025 Offseason Series. My name is Sam Frick. I'm the founder and editor at Around the Northeast Corner, covering schools across Northeast Indiana and Elkhart County. That includes the ACAC, the NECC, and the Northeast 8. This time, we're taking a look at Angola, representing the Northeast Corner Conference. They fell in the opening round of sectionals on Tuesday night when they fell at the hands of Bishop Dwenger, 46-38. And this is during that time where Angola was kind of limping into the postseason. And despite their best efforts, they just couldn't quite get it done in the end in that sectional game at Concordia, where Dwenger advanced, and they would go on to play in the sectional finals, falling to East Snowball. We'll talk about Dwenger in a separate video. But I think when we talk about Angola going into this season, there was some positive momentum coming in from last season, where they went 14-10, their best season in a couple years. Not just from the wins and losses perspective, but really just the overall team morale. Really, it had been a while since Angola. There was some positive momentum for Angola in general with the Hornets. But before we talk about this season, I do want to talk about where things have been with Angola over the last 5 years. It's definitely a far cry from where they were 10 years ago, even as recently as 2019, 2020, when they went 21-3, and Angola was just kind of dominating most teams, except for mostly Concordia in sectional play. But generally speaking, the last 5 years, they've been pretty good. They've had at least a 500 record in every year over the last 5 seasons. Obviously, their 19-6 season, 2020-21, has been the best season of the 5. They went 19-6, although it was a little bit of an up and down start to the season. Remember, it's the first year in Nick Burlingame where he coached there until 2023. And that was a year they kind of just caught lightning in a bottle right towards the new year. And when the team started to get a little healthier and started to gel a little bit more, keep in mind this is Hannah Knowles' senior year, so she had a kind of a historic mark to chase a little bit individually, even though that's not what she cared about at that time. She obviously cared about helping the team win, but she would end up becoming the program's all-time leading scorer in Angola history, which is a record that still stands today, and it might be there for quite a while, depending on where things are at with Angola over the next few years or so. But anyway, 19-6 on the season for that 2021 team. They won the conference tournament. They won a sectional championship, which was a little bit surprising for quite a few people, because Garrett was seen as the favorites that year. They fell to Norwell by 7 in regionals. The next year, they came in with a lot of hype on that team. Unfortunately, it never felt quite the same after that 2021 season. They went 15-10 this season, still a good team. They still had a pretty good team. Lauren Leach had a nice 2022 campaign for the Angola Hornets. This was the first time we saw Kylie Caswell play point guard and showed some promise that year. Still made it to the conference tournament championship game, fell to Garrett by 28 points. Garrett was just a buzzsaw that year. In general, they only lost Garrett by 8, though, in sectional play that year. And then 22-23, it was kind of just one of those years where it was just an up and down season, a lot of adversity with this team. It was also a relatively younger team than the previous couple years. They were 500, 11-11, a lot of injuries with this team in general. It was a long year for that program as a whole. Then Burlingame was fired. Then comes Dave Panning, and he was the JV coach that previous season. Going into 24, there were some, I guess there were some lower expectations just because of the fact the team just didn't look as good in 23. And the team kind of was going in the wrong direction. Even though they were still winning games, they were still kind of going in the wrong direction by that point. But obviously, Dave Payne came in and really turned this puppy around. And I would say that's kind of been the legacy with Dave Panning, is he kind of steered the ship back to where it needed to be with this program after a couple of hurdles, I guess, to best put it, with this program. They went 14-10 and 23-24. That was a little bit more of a talented team. You still had Kylie Caswell, which she played her best her senior year. You had Macy Oberlin, who finally showed a little bit more of her potential her senior year, although with Macy Oberlin. She had never been like completely 100% healthy because of injuries during the season and whatnot, but still, Macy still played her best that senior year and ended up getting a scholarship to play basketball at Thomas More down in Kentucky. 23-24, they went 14-10, decent team. Couldn't quite get it done against Concordia, lost by 3. Who knows what would have happened if they played Woodland for the sectional title? Who knows if they win that game or not? And then this past season, they went 12-11. It was, again, a little bit more like the 2023 team in a way in terms of the basketball stuff. A team that really just went through a lot of trials that year, kind of like 23 in a way. A lot of injuries happened late in the season, which even though they did their best to kind of weather through those hurdles, they just never quite found their highest potential towards postseason play. They just never were 100% healthy after that. And they also had a late start to the season because the volleyball team had a historic season, made it to the state finals, a tremendous season for the volleyball team. We are not taking away from that success whatsoever. Anytime you talk to any of the players that played on the basketball team that also played volleyball, they will tell you they would have replayed this whole season all over again. I mean, let's just be honest. That volleyball team was special. So, again, we're not taking away anything from the volleyball team whatsoever. It just happened to be this basketball season that was an up and down season. It was a season full of adversity. I don't think it was as talented of a team either as it was the previous year, especially because you lost Kylie Caswell. And as much as I thought Lexi Stillman had a good season and did play well until the injury, where she unfortunately tore ACL in the Prairie Heights game, it was overall, I just didn't think the offense gelled quite as well. I thought they were just a little bit inconsistent this past year. It's also worthy to note that I thought this season was more of a bridge year for this program, where you lost a pretty decent group from the 24 campaign. And the 25 class, aside from Bailey Holman, maybe Lexi Stillman in a lot of ways, maybe Lexi Stillman, maybe Ava Reinard. Like, it was not a talented basketball class. It was an athletic class because of the other sports that they played in. But, I mean, Holman was definitely their best player of the seniors. She was definitely their best player and played like a really good basketball player, especially in her best moments in, like, the conference tournament, in key conference games, the postseason. I thought Bailey really showed her best in her final 2 years at Angola compared to her first 2 years. And, I mean, the Bailey Holman you saw her first 2 years to the Bailey Holman you saw the last two completely different players. And I commend her for not giving up and developing her game. I actually would commend the entire senior class of being able to get through these past 4 years and still be able to achieve successful teams. Even though for Angola's standards, it's not at the level that I think Angola expects to be, they still were successful teams, all things considered. Now, you look at their conference records and you say, well, they've never had a bad conference record in the last 15 years, 20 years at least. And I'm thinking to myself, I mean, like, I'm going through the past 25 years, and I'm thinking, when's the last time Angola has had a losing record in conference play? I guess, I mean, the 2016 team, they lost 4 conference games, if I recall, that year. So they still had a winning record that season. Let me see. 2014, they were 8-11. Still won 7 games at least, or 8 games that year, I should say. Oh, you're really thinking hard with this one. Only lost 2 conference games in 2009. I guess you would say 2007, 2008 would be the last time they had a losing record in conference. And even then, it doesn't even happen that often at all since like 1996 when Doug Curtis took over the program. So Angola doesn't struggle in their conference for the most part. Now they do lose a couple games here and there because, your top half of the conference usually is very good in the NECC, but typically the average or below average teams are teams Angola should beat almost every time because Angola has the athletes that maybe they didn't have in the early 90s or the 80s. They certainly have that today, and it's been that way for 25 plus years at Angola. So looking at this season, they opened the season on November 20th, which was a very late start to the season, mainly because of volleyball going to states, and they had quite a few players on this team that played on the volleyball team. So they started the season November 20th at home against Woodland. They lost by 12 points to a Woodland team that had already played. They had already played 3 games up to that point. So they were already getting their reps in, and Alyssa Anderson had 30 points in that contest. So really, Angola it was a rough matchup to open the season, and then they had Eastside on the 22nd. What a brutal way to open your season. You're going to play Woodland and Eastside as their first 2 games. Eastside would go on to win 27 games and reach the semi-state championship game, and they still play Eastside as their second game of the season. They lost by 13 to the Blazers. Won their next 2 games against West Noble and Garrett's. Both teams had rebuilding seasons, especially for West Noble. Then they ran into Norwell, Fairfield, and Central Noble. Norwell was actually a lot closer than a lot of people expected. I think some people thought they might get blown out by Norwell. I was told by Coach Thornton that Norwell did not play well against Angola that day. That was the 30th of November. And Norwell only beat Angola by 8 points, 64-56. Norwell would go on to win a state championship. So I guess that's a good thing for Angola there. Lost in overtime to Fairfield 54-50. That's a game I think Angola probably should have won, if we're to be quite honest with you. I believe that was the best Carly Dillon ever looked as an Angola basketball player. And Carly Dillon is a good soccer player. So I am not discrediting Carly Dillon whatsoever. That was the best Carly ever played as an Angola basketball player. And that was that Fairfield game. And yet they still came up just short against the Falcons. Again, another great basketball team at Fairfield. They lost Central Noble 46-37. Angola got off to such a fantastic start in the first quarter. And Central Noble made a lot of adjustments after that first quarter. Grace Swank, I believe, made 3 threes in that contest. And Angola just couldn't make a basket after that. I don't know what happened to Angola's offense after that. It was like Aspen Southern really got going early on for Angola, and then Bailey Holman was getting to the free throw line. And after that, Angola just couldn't make anything after that. And they were still right in the thick of things because Angola's defense did keep Central Noble in a close one early. Angola kept themselves within striking distance for most of the game until the very end. Then they rattled off 5 straight wins. They played Leo on the road on December 11th, 42-41. Again, going back to Carly Gillen, defensively, Gillen had some of her best moments of her career in that Leo game, making the game-deciding steal to basically seal it for Angola. You had that 64-50 win over Concordia, where Bailey Holman had a career game offensively against Concordia. We'll talk about Bailey Holman's statistics later on. They beat Concord on the road 47-43. Not a great NLC opponent, but still a good win for Angola, especially on the road. 70-44 win over Lakeland. It is a better Lakeland team than what we saw last year. Then they beat Fremont by 9, 52-43. That's a really good Fremont team that would go on to repeat as sectional champions for the first time in 20-some years. Went 20-7, went to the regional championship game. So that's a good Fremont team there. And then things really took a turn for the worse for the season. Unfortunately, they ran into a hot East Noble team that next game on the 8th, which was 4 days after they played Fremont. And, well, they struggled against East Noble. Let's just put it that way. Badly, 52-27 to East Noble. And then you get to the Prairie Heights game just before you get to conference tournament play. And they beat Prairie Heights 53-32. That's good. Here's the problem. You had the injuries. And that's where the injuries started becoming an issue. By that point, Aspen Sutton, who, let's be honest, she had a decent junior season at Angola on the basketball team. But let's be honest, Sutton had not been 100% the entire year because she had been playing through an injury from From volleyball, she suffered an injury of her own, and then they played the Cal the next game. That's not ideal. Usually that's early in like November. They have to play the Cal on January 11th because of Angola going to state in volleyball. They lost by 17 to the Cal. Played in the conference tournament, did well against Garrett. It was an entertaining game. They won 55-48, and that was one of Bailey Holman's better games she's ever played. And then you had the freshman for Angola, and that would be the talented Stella Stockamp. She had one of probably her best game up to this point, where she had, 15 points and made 3 triples against Garrett in that conference tournament game. So they played really well in that game. Ran into a buzzsaw on Eastside in the second round. Obviously, we already know that Eastside had a great season of their own. Then they ran off 3 straight wins against Westview, Churubusco, and Dwayner. Westview game was a 4-point win for Angola. Kind of a gritty game, not a pretty game at all. Then they played Busco, and physical game against Busco, and they beat them by 19 points. And then they had a nice win against Dwayner on their second to last home game of the season. Little did we know that this would be their last win of the season, and they would play Dwayner again in sectionals. Then they got trounced in their final 2 regular season games, playing against 2 excellent teams in Belmont and Warsaw. Belmont went on to have one of the best seasons in program history, 21-3, winning the Northeast State. The only reason Belmont didn't win a sectional was because they ran into Norwell. And then they lost to Warsaw 74-27, who would go on to win 26 games and reach the state finals. So Angola had a really brutal beginning of the regular season, and even more brutal ending to the season, especially when you add up the injuries. And then they lost to Dwayner 46-38. Again, things just didn't pan out for Angola in the end for the Hornets. When you look at this team, obviously we got to talk about the seniors, especially with Bailey Holman for the Angola Hornets, where she averaged her career best 10.5 points per game, 43% shooting, shot 22% from 3, 46% from 2, 73% from the foul line. That was easily her best number there from the foul line. 7.3 rebounds, nearly a steal per game, and then she also averaged 1.4 blocks per game. Bailey Holman's always a very good defender, especially around the rim. Had a great career, all things considered, for her at Angola. Considering where she was at the start of the season offensively to now, definitely showed a better version of herself leaving Angola as a whole. When you look at this season, I talked about the 25-point performance against Garrett. That was a strong performance, 50% shooting, and I think she made a couple threes in that game. Yep, she did. She also had, I think she had a double-double. Yeah, she had 11 rebounds in that game as well. Very strong performance from her. You also have the career game of 29 points on 10 of 12 shooting against Concordia. That was a fantastic game there against the Cadets, 2 of 4 from downtown. She also grabbed 10 rebounds. So, obviously, she had a couple really good games there for the Angola Hornets. Another senior, obviously, Lexi Stillman, when she was healthy, played well, played her best of her career, 8.4 points per game. She also had 7.6 rebounds. She was a big point guard for the Angola Hornets. So, we talked about her being a point guard. She was a big point guard for the Angola Hornets. 4.3 assists, 2.1 steals. Really did a lot of nice things for Angola when she was healthy. Again, unfortunately, when we talked about Lexi Stillman, injuries have just been kind of her bugaboo. And you got to feel bad for her because when she was healthy, she did show some good things. Unfortunately, it's just the injuries just always got in the way with Lexi Stillman, and that's unfortunate. The good thing for her is she did have a good senior year as a whole. And when you count the volleyball season, she did have a good senior year. So if there's anything you can take away from this year is that Lexi Stillman did play her best as a senior. That's the best way you can go out is, you know what, if you're a player, you got to feel like, hey, I put the best that I could in my last year. And I thought Lexi Stillman did just that. Anna McClure, all things considered, did fine considering she kind of had to play a bigger role down the stretch because of Angola struggling with injuries. Did fine considering the circumstances. Again, when I think about Anna McClure, she's a great libero at Angola for volleyball. She is who she is in basketball. She's a role player. It is what it is. Carly Gillen, I thought, had a nice season in terms of her defense. I don't think her game has ever been known for offense on the basketball court, but still played a gritty defensive game, very selfless player. I thought she showed a lot of good things on the defensive side of the ball this year. Her offense, it comes and goes, but I thought her defense was strong this year. In a season of adversity for the program, Aspen Sutton really up until the injury started to catch up to Angola. I thought Aspen Sutton looked solid, especially when we think about the 15-point performance against not Fairfield, but Fremont. There we go. Then you had the 17-point performance against Garrett. That's the best she's looked up to this point against Garrett. Had 16 against Lakeland. And then 14 that lost to Fairfield. Did look good in quite a few games. Just unfortunately down the stretch, things just kind of it really just became difficult for Angola to overcome some of these hurdles that they had to go deal with the injuries and a challenging schedule. Ava Reinert, I thought she had a decent year as well, especially from downtown. 37 threes, the most she's ever made it as a high school player. I thought she did a nice job of being able to stretch the offense from downtown and becoming that solid wing player for the Hornets. And then you got the freshmen. And when we talk about the Angola Hornets, one of the things that we're going to be looking at for next year is this freshman class that are now going to soon be sophomores next year. We saw quite a bit of Kendall Holman and Stella Stockamp, especially down the stretch of the season. Early on, we did see Stockamp early on the season clearly was not ready for the varsity limelight, but then she came back during the conference tournament, primarily due to Angola's injury situation. And honestly, considering the circumstances, I thought Stella did a decent job and looked her best towards the end of the season. 11 points against Dwayne in the first meeting, not the sectional game, but against Dwayne in the regular season. You also had the 15-point performance against Garrett, 12 against Busco. She did show you enough towards the end. I think you have to expect nothing but the best for Stella Stockamp, as I would have to assume, is going to compete for the point guard position next year with another guard that did not see as much varsity spotlight in Ella Savick. Only played 7 games. Kind of hard to really assess her varsity game because she only played 7 games, and really a lot of those games came in crunch time where games were starting to wrap up and Angola had no chance of winning those games, or Angola was up big. So you really didn't know exactly what we could see for Ella Savick just based on the varsity games. But if you look at the JV games, she averaged around 12.5 points per game. Really becoming a nice all-around guard, playing good defense, being a nice floor general, could shoot the ball a little bit. There has been some moments, even in middle school, where she can become a nice offensive generator for the Angola Hornets. So I'm really excited to see what this backcourt of Ella Savick and Stella Stockamp can do for this program. We obviously saw a lot of Kendall Holman, which is Bailey's sister. I thought she looked the best, I would say, of the group all around, and averaging 2.9 points per game, 2.9 rebounds per game. She's obviously going to elevate her game as she moves up and starts to get the reps and starts to improve her game. I'm looking forward to see what Kendall Holman can bring, especially she's a 6'1" big. So she's got a couple extra inches on her. She is going to be a force to be reckoned with once she gets things going. Not only in basketball, but also with volleyball. She is going to be a force to be reckoned with for opposing teams in the future. So I think to kind of wrap things up, because I am talking quite a bit about Angola here. Obviously, when we talk about this program, we still don't know who's the head coach of this team at this time. So a lot of things can change depending on who the Nets head coach is going to be for Angola. So to put it this way, whoever is the Nets head coach of Angola is going to have a talented team coming up. And so you're going to have a nice group of kids coming back that are going to provide some potential there. Obviously, they're going to lose a big senior class. So it's going to look like a different team. But if the Hornets can generate better offense, be able to get some type of a balanced offense together, be able to gel a little bit better, get some consistency, get some ball movement going, and then obviously, can this team be able to defend a little better? I think their defense showed moments of being pretty good, but I think they can be better. And I think there's a lot to show. I think there's a lot of potential for next year. Can they put this group together and be able to get enough depth? I think it's going to be key for this team moving forward. But I'm really excited to see what this young team can look like. But obviously, when you bring in a team that's going to be a little bit more inexperienced, obviously there's going to be question marks on how the team's going to gel. How consistent will this team be? But I think the talent kind of outweighs the question marks, because I think whoever comes in with this program, I think has a team that has the makings of being a pretty good basketball team come next season.